I think that, like I said before, language is a way of making sense of the world around us in a shared way. You know, how I perceive the world might be different to how you perceive the world. But by communicating through language, we're able to form a shared perspective, understand each other's perceptions better. So in that way, I think it helps us not only understand like society and, you know, our external environment, but also each other.
Do you think there is a external truth? Like how obviously you have your truth, I've got my truth. We can discuss it. But do you think there's a third truth that exists outside of our discussing of truths?
There's probably an objective truth as to what actually happened. But again, I think language frames it because say you fell over, right? Hopefully not. But say you tripped and fell over. There are different ways of presenting that objective truth. You know, I could say Jeff fell over his tripod.
I could say you pushed me.
I pushed you, or the tripod made Jeff fall. You know, and they all have subtle differences. So despite the action being the same, the way you've presented it is completely different.
I completely agree.
So the objective truth, I don't know what language it would be in, whether it be in language at all, or whether it be like a video or something, but I don't know how we'd understand the objective truth without putting our perspective into it.
I think the only way I've found to be true is through dialogue.
Okay.
I think that's why I do podcasts at the heart of it. I am someone who's obsessed with truth. I'm obsessed with finding what truth because it's going to affect how I live my life.
Okay.
I want to live a life which is healthy, good for society, and happy. Very, very simple. But in the pursuit of that, I have conversations with people, and I've always done it since I was a kid. Just ask loads of questions because I want to figure out what you think and then what I think, and then is there a crossover? You know that Venn diagram when it's like a thing, yeah. Is there's a crossover, and if that crossover is more likely to be true than any of our singular perspectives, you know, and like finding that. And obviously you can go too far with that, you know, we've seen how it happens with religion and all of this stuff, and like, you know, kind of like instilling your truth on someone else and calling that the objective truth. It's a very difficult thing. But I think, yeah, the dialectic or the dialogue approach of like, I share my language, what do you think? And then you share your language. And then through that process, we can like go around the truth. You know, I think that's the process that we all engage in. I think we don't have that these days. You know, these days we're kind of losing that ability to have that conversation. Just sit down with someone and be like, what do you think? And what do I think? You know, it feels to me these days it's all skibbity bop bop. Skibbity bop bop bop. You know, this brain rot kind of perspective. What do you shift
What do I think of brain rot? Taking a left turn from truth, gone to brain rot.
What do you think of the emergence of brain rot? Do you think it has a place, or do you think it's is a problem in our society?
I mean, it's like a guilty indulgence. Do you know what I mean? I think it definitely has a place. It's in a way, it's sort of, you know, a reflection of how our language and our use of language has changed. It's a reflection of the times, I think. So to deny it would be to deny a part of society.
Yeah.
And I think the Generation Alpha would come for me if I said.
They'll come for all of us. Three, 2, 1. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Jeoffrey Sarpong podcast. Today I'm here with Mathi. Mathi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. We've taken a journey to find somewhere to record. Again, the best part about these podcasts is that I don't have a specific place to record. So half of the time we spend time walking around and then like finding a place. And like today you've seen how it is behind the scenes where it's like,
we walked around half of London.
We walked around half of London just to find somewhere, which isn't even like that secluded. It's just, I'm like worried about my phone, worried about things. But anyway. All that aside, I'm glad to be here. I'm thankful that you're here. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me today.
Of course. And like, just a quick background on why I'm having you on today. So I think one thing that I really love, to kind of dissect is, thinking and like ideas and like, where ideas come from and like just the theory of ideas. And I know when we talk and have a conversation, like I spoke to you about, you have a very interesting way of viewing things, you know. You have a very interesting way to view things, and you have a very interesting how you dissect ideas, and you're going to be studying law. So I thought it'd be great to have a conversation about the difference between law and poetry, but also just the idea of thinking systems in general. And so yeah, that's why I'm having you today. I'm looking forward to it.
Super excited.
So one of the things that you mentioned when we first spoke is that you are a fan of Hamlet.
Yeah.
So first off, I love Hamlet. I love like Shakespeare. That's probably one of my favorite Shakespeare's. I did admit that I've not actually seen the whole thing, but from what I've seen, I really like it. I think it's really cool. I think it's like, you know, Hamlet himself as a character is such a unique character. He has a unique way of viewing the world. He has a unique way of existing. You know, he thinks a lot. He ruminates a lot. And, you know, and I think, like I told you, he reminds me of like modern day people, our generation of people, how they think. But before we start there, talk to me a little bit more about that. Like how would you describe Hamlet to someone who hasn't read it yet?
As a play, there's sort of the black letter plot of the ghost of his father comes and visits him, and then the ghost tells him that Claudius killed his father. But what's interesting to me is that Hamlet is like the epitome of human condition and thinking. And, you know, we were talking about the idea of overthinking, and how he's sort of paralyzed with the amount of information that he has, that he's unable to make a decision. And I think that's like a really interesting part of Hamlet, the most interesting part of Hamlet. Sorry, Shakespeare, but how we get to see his mind like from his perspective, but also not from his perspective. So
I completely agree. And you said something that's super interesting about like how is part of the human condition, like how is the bear, because I think he's the first main character of his type, where you see them deal with the conditions of the human, like what it means to be human, and like the bare bone aspect of just being like your mind is just racing 1,000 miles per hour and everything like that. I think a lot of that is just kind of like linked to how our generation views a lot of things, which I want to talk about. Like, do you think our generation would benefit from reading Hamlet? Do you think they'll be able to see the effects of overthinking and what that does to a person?
I think there's a bit of a difference because Hamlet obviously is overthinking quite major topics. You know, he's considering whether or not he should kill his uncle, which I don't think is something most of us have to think about.
You don't think that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that relates to us. But I think everyone could benefit from reading Hamlet. Yeah. It's a great play. Plug for Hamlet.
Plug for Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Why do you think it still resonates then? Like, if not like the fact that we're all thinking about killing our uncle and, you know, thinking about how our other uncle is doing something with our Queen Mother. What do you think? Why do you think it still resonates with people all these years later?
I think it is the human condition, like we said. How Hamlet goes through such range of emotions, and how ultimately he's not a hero, but he's like one of us. You know, he's the main character in the play. So I think that kind of makes it quite relatable. So it's like reading someone from our generation in a play.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the cool thing about Shakespeare, I think we're just going to gush about Shakespeare for a little bit. I think one of the things I really love about Shakespeare is his understanding of the human condition. And I used to tell my friends all of this all the time. Like, I think Shakespeare is the greatest writer of all time. And people are like, whatever.
Big statement.
I know, but I think his ability to understand what human beings feel and portray that in his characters is like second to none. I think he, especially for the English gentleman, he kind of gave them a way of being, like a way of understanding, like how to relate to your fellow humans.
Okay.
You know, like his way of like character. Because I remember like even like moving away from Hannah a little bit, his way of like looking at like Othello, for example, how this character was like, you know, tortured by this thing that he thought was going on between his wife and Desdemona and his, you know, his friend.
Iago.
Yeah, thank you. Just like that relationship, and to like break that down and like, I think that reflects a lot about how human beings think and I think Shakespeare had a very good understanding of human beings, you know, obviously, evidently in Hamlet too. But what do you think What do you think about that idea? What do you think about the idea that, you know, Shakespeare is arguably the greatest writer of all time?
That's a big assertion. I'm not going to comment on like the literary science company. I think he's definitely got a range of plays but his way, like you said, his way of capturing the human condition and quite human emotions that are central to all of us. I think that's what makes him great. Whether he's the greatest is up for debate, but definitely one of the greatest.
It's always funny when you make these like grand statements, right? Because you make a grand statement, someone's going to disagree with you.
How are you going to defend it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal opinion, right? It's like, how can you say I'm wrong if I believe that? Again.
How are you saying you're right?
How you saying I'm right, exactly. Yeah. All in a circle. On Hamlet, actually, then, I thought when I read it, one of the things that I think was poignant to me was like his indecision, his inability to figure out what he should do. You know, like, you know, he has this dream and he's like, oh my God, this thing happens, and he's unsure this whole time. And I thought, do you think that his indecision is a part of his weakness, or do you think it's kind of like his refusal to simplify the world? And on further from that, what do you think that says about our generation's like indecision? Because I feel like there's a lot of indecision with us, right? We don't know anything. Everything's up in the air. Everything's in flux. But do we look at that as like a negative, or do you look at that as like a part of like truly grappling with the complexity of what the world is?
I think making a decision is always a good idea. Hamlet's decision comes from wanting to understand everything. And I think that's a good trait to have. But you have to make a decision at the end of the day, and decisiveness is key. So as much as you can think and analyze everything, he has to make a decision. So it is sort of a weakness, but it's not a weakness of Hamlet necessarily. I think it's more just people. You know, if we weren't pressed to make a decision, we would probably spend all of our time thinking about something. So but whether or not it's a refusal to comply with the complexity of the world, I don't know, because refusal's quite strong. I think he still tries to make sense of it. It's just he's unfortunately unable to.
Let's dig into that then. Do you think, just that question alone, rather than speaking for the being general about everything, do you think there is a idea behind refusing to understand the complexity of the world? Because I think, right, and this is where I kind of got the question from, that there is sometimes, you are right, there is a chance where you have to make a decision. You make a decision for your life and you follow it. But like, you're working with incomplete information, and that's like obvious, right? But there is also people who make a decision and just accept what is, almost as if like, oh, you're like, you know, the world is complex, but I'm going to simplify it in my mind and just make a decision based on that. But there is something to be said about accepting the complexity of the world, you know, accepting that everything's in flux and still making a decision anyway. You know, maybe that's not what Hamlet was doing. What do you think about that? What do you think about the two paths, I guess, of like either simplifying the world and making a decision because it's easier to just have like 3 ideas that you think about and then just like follow that, or like accepting that it's like infinitely complex, but it's fine because, you know, like you accept the complexity in itself?
I don't think those are 2 separate ideas though. I think it's all about sorry, that's a really cute dog. In moderation.
It is a really cute dog.
It is a really cute dog. How you make sense of the world around you and how much information you're willing to let in, how much information you're willing to dissect. So I think that's a good question, but they're not 2 separate ideas. I think analyzing information is good, but also being aware that you're always going to have incomplete information and still making a decision.
What do you think about that then? The idea that there's always going to be incomplete information. Like, what does that say about the pursuit of knowledge and truth? Just a left foot question out there.
Rephrase that for me.
If the understanding that you're never going to find the ultimate truth, right? Should we still pursue truth? Should we still pursue knowledge? And understanding that we're never going to find an answer to it. Isn't it just like us, like kind of like going in circles because there's never a true answer?
I don't think it'll be us going in circles. I think it's good to try and it's noble in its pursuit to find the truth. Whether or not we find it is the byproduct, but making the effort is good. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Putting in the work to try and find the truth is noble in
Absolutely.
itself. You'd rather kick yourself saying, oh, at least I tried, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, oh, I couldn't be bothered to try.
I couldn't even try, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one statement that Hamlet makes, which I think is really, really cool, is that he says, thinking is neither good or bad. Wait, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a fantastic phrase. I think, again, one of Shakespeare's absolute, like, universal truths that he's able to, like, put a hand on. And I want to dissect that idea. What do you think about that idea? Do you agree?
I agree with the surface idea, because there are two extremes to this. One of them is taking the statement as is and saying, you know, nothing has meaning. But what I think Shakespeare's getting at is the idea of relativity in a moral sense. So, you know, Hamlet's idea of what's good or bad is based on, you know, it's relative to other things. But I do think we have an idea of objective morality.
Go away, pigeon! Sorry.
I do think we have this idea of objective morality. So, you know, the idea that murder is wrong, and you know what I mean.
Pigeons can fly away.
So I think on a deeper level, we have objective morality that guides us as humans. You know, the idea that murder is wrong, treat people with kindness, that kind of thing. But above that, I think nothing is good or bad. I think that's kind of based on how we're brought up and, you know, what we think is good and what we think is bad individually. But as part of the broader human life, I think there is some sort of objectivity. So
I agree.
So I'd agree with it in moderation.
Yeah. Like, don't take it to be just literally. But I think, do you think when he talks about it, he's talking about our tendency to go further? So, like, if there is an idea of like, oh, this thing happened to me, and you think about it so much, it could make it a bad thing because you're like kind of like now you're overthinking about it. Like, do you think he's talking about the aspect of like if something happens to you, it's neither good or bad. It's just something that happened to you, but your thoughts about the thing, you know, abstracting it is actually the problem. Like, you know, and what do you think that says about how we can face challenges in life?
I think more than what happens to us, it's how we respond to things. I think that's quite important. So that might be what Shakespeare's getting at. We'll never know. We can't ask him. But I think that's what he's getting at. So definitely, I like to take experiences as they are. So when I go on holiday, if someone asks me if I had a good holiday or a bad holiday, I kind of just say I had the holiday.
Yeah.
Experience.
Thinking makes it so.
Yeah. Like you learn something new about, you know, yourself or people around you based on an experience. So to label something as good or bad is sometimes rudimentary, but I think overthinking things can be a detriment to other things in your life that you actually care about, what you pay attention to. So yeah.
Okay, thinking on that then. Thinking on that.
We've thinking on
overthinking. Do you think overthinking then is a flaw? Or do you think that's just people thinking without a purpose? Like, do you think there's a purpose to overthinking, or do you think it's like you shouldn't do it either way?
I think.
We're going to say that a lot.
I think thinking with a goal in mind, or if it leads to action, that's beneficial. But if we're thinking with no action at the end of it, so we're just kind of going in circles and analysing, deconstructing, but not making something of it, then that's when I think it's a bit unnecessary.
Yeah. You know, it's funny too, because like, I believe there are certain people who can't help that. I believe I'm a kind of person who can't help overthinking. Like, my mind just works differently. And I've kind of accepted this as I go and older. I like picking apart ideas. I like figuring out why things work. I like dissecting things in first principle. And so that just requires a lot of overthinking. And before I had poetry, so I'd love to get into that also later on, the difference between like how a poet thinks and stuff like that. Before I had poetry, I had no purpose for the overthinking. You know, I had no way to kind of like structure it. You know, I know you do this too. Like, every time I have a thought now, I write it down. So then, like, I don't have to like think about the thought, all of it in one time. I can like go back and like revisit it, you know? So I think it's a lot about what kind of person you are. And it's also like based on the kind of person you find your own ways and systems to offset that.
But wasn't your overthinking beneficial because it led to you overthinking in your poetry and
Yeah.
thinking about your poetry.
Yeah.
So it's had a positive output.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily overthinking. It's just thinking that's led to something.
Yeah, I think it's like
I was nervous for you.
I think it's like yeah, I mean, it is overthinking in a sense, because I think it's, again, I would like to dissect that even more, but like where that even comes from. I think a lot of my overthinking was from emotions that I couldn't unpack. You know, like we have emotions, and like it's not like straight away you cannot get over it. And so I would think about the emotion, but I'm not doing anything about the emotion. So I think and think and think. And poetry was a way for me to like stop that at the first step, which like I can have a think about the emotion instead of overthinking it. I express it in a poem, and then I let that do the talking, so I can get over the emotion. You know, I think most people have it differently, how they approach it differently. You know, that's how I do it. Do you have a way of overthinking? If you do, how do you suggest people stop overthinking or get over that?
See, the thing is, I'm not really an overthinker.
Mm.
I sort of, I allow myself to feel how I feel,
Mm.
and then I will rationalize it. Or say, okay, why do I feel like this? To have a conversation with myself. And then once I've decided what the appropriate action I should take is, I kind of, that's my sort of cathartic release, because I know I've done what I can. So that's sort of similar to you with your poetry, how, you know, you have an output. So for me, as long as I make an output of something or a decision, sorry, Hamlet, I feel quite calm then, and I know what to do. So,
how have you got that to that stage? Of like, was it difficult at the beginning, like having that thought process? Like, okay, analyze my feeling, understand it, output, done. Is that difficult to do, or is that just something that comes naturally to you?
I think being self-aware, but not in the sense of like who I am, but more as in, I don't know how to phrase it. What makes me the most productive I can be. That's probably where that originated from. Because I think I realized I like to do check-ins with myself, you know, what's working in my life, what's not working. I think one of the things that came up was that if I have an emotion and I'm not really, do you know what I mean? It's kind of infiltrating other parts of my life, and I can't compartmentalize it. That's, I think, how I came up with it. So
I think that's super cool. I think it's like, I'm so very similar, actually, ironically. I think for me, the reason I started writing poetry, I think I've said this a million times on this podcast, is because I started because of a girl. She wrote poetry, and I was like, oh my God, this is really cool. And then she assumed, like, oh, you should also do it too. But I think the reason why she saw that, because I think the same way, where I like to dissect things. I like to dissect things, and then through the dissection of it, I can figure out what's the best course of action. And so, like, to me, that's kind of what poems are, you know, like you talk to yourself about a thing, you dissect it, you look at it from different sides, and then you come to a conclusion of it, you know, or like by writing about it, the conclusion will kind of form itself.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a very good, I thought that was a very good, very good way of like, you know, approaching art, you know, and so that's kind of where I've kind of like taken it from. Speaking a little bit more now about the difference between law and poetry, I want to delve into that a little bit more. First, a big question. What does law mean to you? What is the idea of law mean to you?
You did prepare me for that way. Sort of just throwing this on me. I think law as a system is a way for us to outline and uphold rights and responsibilities of individuals and groups of individuals. That's what it means to me. That's my definition.
A very good definition.
Thank you.
I agree. I think the reason why, because I like to start with that before we delve into like comparisons, so then we know where we're both standing from, right?
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, that's a really good definition. I think you're right. Law is a system for us to kind of like, I think law is arguably the greatest idea for society we've ever had. You know, again, I'm making a lot of generalizations in this episode.
A lot of assertions.
There's a lot of assertions.
Shakespeare's the greatest. Law's the greatest.
Challenging. What are you going to do? Like, I'm right. Like, I believe I'm right. I think, no, the reason why law is such a fascinating idea, because I think it's what makes us human. it takes us from being animals who are like allowed to just do whatever based on their own desires to now kind of like, no, we're actually going to aspire for things more. I think that's the basis on which you can build a society and you can like, you know, grow it. So I think the theory of law, like the understanding of law has always fascinated me, you know. So I think it's like, it's interesting, and I want to speak to you about this too. Interesting to see the relationship between how a person, because I would say someone who's law and into law is structured, you know, very much like, okay, based on truth or based on like ideas that have come before, follow to the letter of the law. We have that phrase, you know, that crazy certain kind of person is interested in that. Yeah. Do you agree with that? What kind of person do you think is interested in law?
Best kind of people.
Of course. Of course.
I think you have to be sort of organized and structured, like you said, in how you approach things. So like, if there's a problem, deconstructing different elements, understanding the relationship between the elements and then structuring it like that. I would say organization is a big thing, and attention to detail, which is quite similar to poetry. But I think that law, you have to be, the devil is in the details, whether it be language or concepts or finding loopholes, lots of details. So attention to detail was like a really fun thing.
What was your favorite thing to learn about law? Like, what was something that you really enjoyed when you were learning? Was it like the case studies? Was it like, yeah, like, because for me, right, the reason from the outside, what I think is fascinating about law is just like, I don't know if you've seen Suits, right? So to me, it's like what Suits is like, you know, when it's like, you know, Harvey just walking in with a suit, just like looking cool, dapper.
Who we want to be.
Everyone wants to be Harvey Specter. But yeah, that's like the perception of what law is. And so I think a lot of people, when they see law, they go, I want to do that. I want to make Your Honor, like, this is the wrong thing they said. And then, you know, like, win the case there. But I don't know how realistic that is. So that's why I'm asking you, as someone who's going to study it, what is something that you enjoy about law? And also, like, how realistic is what we see, the depiction of law in places like Suits, with like what it really is like?
Suits, however amazing as a show it is probably not the most realistic. I think there's a lot more behind the scenes in terms of the work that you're putting in and the hours that you're putting in. So commendably, it's lots of hard work. There's lots of reading in law, which Harvey Specter doesn't seem to do. You know, you can kind of just pick up a case file and then read 2 lines and be like, Mike, this is what you need to do.
This is to Mike. Mike can just memorize everything in one word.
Exactly. But it's a lot of reading, which is tons of fun. And I think that, yeah, it's probably not that realistic, but it's great entertainment value. What was your second question?
What was your favorite part about law? Like, what was the thing that really like spoke to you, or like what do you think meshes well with your character or personality?
Okay, so there are two key parts. I think one part that's quite interesting to me is legal argumentation. So the reasoning and the steps you take to formulate an argument, I think to me that's quite fun. It's sort of how I would write, like my equivalent of writing a poem. Do you know what I mean? Putting together different arguments, deciding what's stronger, what goes first. I think that's quite interesting to me. And then in terms of academically, law as a system, and how things are structured. That's my fun. I'm a really fun person.
Let's break it down.
Okay.
You are a very fun person. Let's break it down. Okay, so you mentioned it's kind of your way of doing poetry, and I kind of want to like, so I'm a poet, obviously, and you're someone who studied law. I want to talk about the differences or similarities between that. So when you say you're breaking down 2 kind of like arguments and looking at it from both sides, is that like, what goes into that? Is that like a lot of research and then like understanding what the opposition is going to say versus like what you want to say? Is that like reading about like a law that was made in like 1918 something and then using that as your basis for like, oh, they're not going to know this, I'm going to use this? What do you think, what do you think is similar or different in the process of putting thing, like, I guess, a case together or putting together a poem?
Okay, I probably can't speak from the side of poetry, but you could probably, you know, correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think preparation is key. Preparation is quite a big thing for me. Sometimes you might have to read a case from way back when, but anticipating what the other side is going to say is key. That comes into your preparation and how you're organizing your materials. So I do think that preparation is key.
You know what's interesting too, because I think like there is no preparation in poetry.
Really, you
like, just kind of
what comes to mind.
Literally, I think the only preparation is like what you've been feeling.
Okay.
So like I have to have a very good relationship with my feelings. I have to be very self-aware. I have to be almost like in a,
like Socrates.
Like yeah, but even like yeah, and like it has to be completely self-aware of your faults and your things. So you have no control over it. I've gone to a stage in my poetry where I don't like what I write. I have no control over. As in like ideas come to me and I write, and I'm like the very best poets can get rid of people's perception of them while they write. You know, so they're not thinking about, oh, what are you gonna think when I say this thing? It's like what is the poem asking me to say? What truth do I have to reveal? You know, so I think it is very interesting. I think the personal relationship poets have with their work versus the external relationship that like, you know, lawyers will have with what they do. You know, it's very much impersonal. It's got nothing to do with me. Maybe it does, and just like how much work you put in, your ethic, you know. But like, as a poet, it all comes from within. Even if you're talking about an external thing, it's like how that external thing made you feel.
Very introspective.
Yeah. Do you think there's a place for that in law, or do you think it has to be just hard, cold facts?
I think there is a place for it, and how you construct arguments, how you frame. We were talking about the question one of the questions I didn't like, but how you phrase two sides. Do you know what I mean? I don't remember the question, but I made a comment that it's not necessarily two opposites, but you've framed it as such. And I think law, you get to have lots of fun with that, and how you frame a narrative and how you put together the facts and or how you display the facts. So I think you do get to have a bit of fun
with the creative side of it. It's
very
really
creative. Cool. But there are also procedures that you do have to follow. But it's probably not as introspective.
Yeah.
Still lots of fun.
But also you're working with audiences, right? Like same thing. Like if you're delivering a poem to an audience, maybe they're not going to clap in the court of law, they click their fingers. But it is the same thing. You're working with an audience, so it's like, how do you get your ideas across to an audience? You know, and it's like, you know, if your client depends on you being able to like deliver what you've prepared for, you know, very much to that audience. How much of a role do you think that is, like performing and presenting yourself is in law in a courtroom? How much? Because I know it's very important in poetry, where it's like, even if you have the best poem, performing it will show you how really good the poem is. Is that kind of similar, do you think, in law?
That is similar, but I think it comes more from like how you prepare. So how you want to frame the case. I think that's more about the performing side of it. But I think there is a space for performing in a courtroom. You know, I haven't necessarily seen anything dramatic as poetry just yet in a courtroom, but maybe one day.
Maybe one day you can start that. You can start that kind of.
You're right. Here is my monologue.
You start like going into a Hamlet monologue and a soliloquy in the middle of it.
To be or not to be.
To be or not to be.
Is the question.
Indeed. I think, yeah, you mentioned before how important language is, like precise language. I think that's something similar.
Yeah.
Talking about differences, I think there's something similar in poetry and law. It's like every word I use is thought over 100 times. Like even like of or the, like I have to think about the rhythm. Does that fit? Or like do I have to add a sentence? So I have to read these things to myself 1,000 times over and over and over and over and over again, just so I can like, okay, does this make sense? This is what I'm trying to say. I think that's a very important thing for me. It's like if I write a poem, I'm like literally, I was talking about this, about my process.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm stepping on stones in a river, right? And like a word, it's like, okay, this word kind of works, so this word doesn't work. Or like this word is not what I'm trying to say, but it works rhythmically. How do I cut it? So like I literally need to use just the right word in just the right way in just the right sequence. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Otherwise, I have to restart the poem again. Like, okay, no, it doesn't make sense to me. How similar is the process like for you? How important is like using the specific word in a court of law?
Specific language is very important. I'll give you an example.
Mm.
There was a traffic law case, of all cases, where the defendant was contesting what the law said because they had... Okay, so the most disputable part of the case was the phrase flashing lights. So what does flashing lights mean to you?
Lights that flash. Like, I guess, blinkers.
So there were two different interpretations. One of the interpretations was lights that have the capacity to flash. So you can have flashing lights and it can also not be flashing. So the whole idea was that, you know, in the statute it said you cannot have flashing lights. So that was one interpretation. And then the other interpretation was the actual act of the lights flashing. So whether or not it's off, if it's off, that's completely fine. But if it's flashing, then it's illegal. So there was you know, it was quite fun.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Seeing the difference between these two things and how it actually made a difference. Because they related it to police cars. And if you have flashing lights and, you know, if someone sees flashing lights, they might mistake you for police and what kind of implication that can have for traffic. So that's just an example of how language is really important in law. And so I think that's quite similar to poetry in that regard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think even more important because we're talking about like, you know, obviously like you go to jail if you misinterpret something like that, you know. I think it's so cool to see something where language is taken like very seriously.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something they're supposed to have in common. Where the law is just language, right? Just language that we've kind of like cemented to be truth, and we go like, no, this is true. And I think like even when you're like testifying, right, you put your hand on the Bible, it's like what you're saying has to be true, you know, because like what you say in this place will decide someone's life. So it's like that kind of What do you think about it? What do you think about how both law and poetry, you can speak from a law perspective, how they make language important and the difference? Because I feel like these days, skibbity and whatever, language isn't that important. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter what you say, it matters, I guess, what you mean. But like, if law is like very important, what you say and what you mean. What do you think about that?
Well, again, I don't think what you mean and what you say are two separate things. I think the language that you use is used to depict what you mean. Do you know what I mean? And I think law is important in that regard, how it tries to make it as accurate as it tries to capture as accurately as possible what you mean. And vagueness just kind of means we can't figure out what you actually mean.
Yeah.
So that's why it's, you know, important. Yeah, I don't think they're two opposite ideas. I think law is very precise in trying to find out, yes, what you've said, but also what the intention was.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think also like it's fascinating to me because it kind of shows how language will shape reality. I think law more than anything proves that, and also poetry. I think poetry kind of shapes our soul.
Let's go.
Poetry shapes our soul, but like law shapes the fabric of our society, as I guess.
Get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, copyright. But yeah, like the law shapes, or like the language we use in law shapes the fabric of our society because it shows that like language has a place where it's important. And I think the reason why, if you think about how we developed as people, you know, more and more language became important to be like communicated, but also like, let's write this down, or like, let's like codify it in a law because we all need to follow what this means, you know. Talk to me about like that. Do you think it is a true statement that language shapes our society? Do you think it's more than that? Like, you know, do you think that's such too much of a simple idea? What do you think about that?
Does language shape our society?
Or our reality?
In what way?
As in like, the language me and you share will determine how me and you act, which will determine like how we act in society, or like the reality that around us, you know. Or like, I couldn't understand, or even simply, do you agree with the statement that we can't understand our reality without language?
Probably.
Go on, expand.
I think that, like I said before, language is a way of making sense of the world around us in a shared way. You know, how I perceive the world might be different to how you perceive the world. But by communicating through language, we're able to form a shared perspective, understand each other's perceptions better. So in that way, I think it helps us not only understand like society and, you know, our external environment, but also each other.
Do you think there is a external truth? Like how obviously you have your truth, I've got my truth. We can discuss it. But do you think there's a third truth that exists outside of our discussing of truths?
There's probably an objective truth as to what actually happened. But again, I think language frames it because say you fell over, right? Hopefully not. But say you tripped and fell over. There are different ways of presenting that objective truth. You know, I could say Jeff fell over his tripod.
I could say you pushed me.
I pushed you, or the tripod made Jeff fall. You know, and they all have subtle differences. So despite the action being the same, the way you've presented it is completely different.
I completely agree.
So the objective truth, I don't know what language it would be in, whether it be in language at all, or whether it be like a video or something, but I don't know how we'd understand the objective truth without putting our perspective into it.
I think the only way I've found to be true is through dialogue.
Okay.
I think that's why I do podcasts at the heart of it. I am someone who's obsessed with truth. I'm obsessed with finding what truth because it's going to affect how I live my life.
Okay.
I want to live a life which is healthy, good for society, and happy. Very, very simple. But in the pursuit of that, I have conversations with people, and I've always done it since I was a kid. Just ask loads of questions because I want to figure out what you think and then what I think, and then is there a crossover? You know that Venn diagram when it's like a thing, yeah. Is there's a crossover, and if that crossover is more likely to be true than any of our singular perspectives, you know, and like finding that. And obviously you can go too far with that, you know, we've seen how it happens with religion and all of this stuff, and like, you know, kind of like instilling your truth on someone else and calling that the objective truth. It's a very difficult thing. But I think, yeah, the dialectic or the dialogue approach of like, I share my language, what do you think? And then you share your language. And then through that process, we can like go around the truth. You know, I think that's the process that we all engage in. I think we don't have that these days. You know, these days we're kind of losing that ability to have that conversation. Just sit down with someone and be like, what do you think? And what do I think? You know, it feels to me these days it's all skibbity bop bop. Skibbity bop bop bop. You know, this brain rot kind of perspective. What do you shift
What do I think of brain rot? Taking a left turn from truth, gone to brain rot.
What do you think of the emergence of brain rot? Do you think it has a place, or do you think it's is a problem in our society?
I mean, it's like a guilty indulgence. Do you know what I mean? I think it definitely has a place. It's in a way, it's sort of, you know, a reflection of how our language and our use of language has changed. It's a reflection of the times, I think. So to deny it would be to deny a part of society.
Yeah.
And I think the Generation Alpha would come for me if I said.
They'll come for all of us. But I think it's okay, let me simplify the question then. Maybe not brain rot, but it's like the short attention span. I think attention is very important for people when it comes to development of anything. Like, you know, you don't get ideas. Like, for example, reading, right? It takes a long attention span or just a normal attention span to sit down and read a book. Hamlet, for example, right? If you don't do that, you don't understand the knowledge that's implicit in the book. But it seems like we've turned towards quick information, quick attention, short attention span. And so we're losing a lot of that. We're losing a lot of information that's like been coded in these texts, you know. And the question I have is that I get it that we are moving with the times, and like now you need to have a quick understanding of things. You need to catch people's attention in the first minute. But are we losing something that's very important by, you know, updating our way of like receiving information? Do you think?
I think that's sort of like a trade-off. I personally like reading. I love reading. So to me, I'm not too affected by the brain rot, although I do like to indulge. But I think it's based on how you value individually. You know, would you rather have this or that? So we might be losing it, but I think people who cherish reading will stick to it. Yeah.
But it's funny because it's so difficult now, because I agree, like, yeah, people who read will continue to read. They don't care about what's going on around you, right? But like, there's systems, these reels, man, these Instagram reels, man, they're very, very distracting, right? And I think that's I want to pose this idea to you, actually, going a bit off script. There is this idea that, like, I've realized that being obsessed with something is the only way to get away from the distractive nature of the world currently. There's so much things that distract you. But if you find the passion that you really care about, what you really feel in your heart, that's like what you're meant to do, and you just focus on that, that's the only way to kind of offset the distraction. Because everything, and it's so like, it's like death by 1,000 cuts.
Okay.
It's not like one massive blow where it's, oh my God, boom, you're done. It's like an Instagram reel here, an Instagram reel there, TikTok here. Notifications on, WhatsApp notifications, a lot of things that will interrupt your flow of being able to deep focus on anything, which means you're not really learning anything. Everything is like piecemeal information. People say they learn off TikTok. I don't think they learn off TikTok. I think they get a lot of information off TikTok, but it's very short, digestible information, which you forget after half an hour, you know? So I guess there's no question in there, but it's like, what do you think about that? What do you think the idea that, like, the only way to offset this age of short attention span is to devote yourself almost obsessively to something that, like, will keep your attention in the long term?
I think the way you frame that is quite as if we're passive. I think we do have the ability to choose what we're watching. I do acknowledge that, you know, sometimes you watch too many reels or whatever, but I think that's completely up to you. Like, I enjoy watching reels or watching YouTube, or, do you know what I mean? But it's all in moderation, because I know at the end of the day, this is for my enjoyment and I might learn something from it, but I also have other things to do. So I think just being aware of where your priorities are, and reminding yourself what you actually want to get up to in the day, I think that's sort of helpful.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think you are, you know, you can choose what you want to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes if you're watching something and you're like, oh, I've been watching this for too long, you know, you snap out of it and then you get on with your day. And I think, you know, just checking in on yourself, you know, and what you're doing is important. And yeah.
Talk to me more about that then, because you seem to have, it's a very, very unique perspective. I agree, but I don't think a lot of people do struggle with, you know, the social media distractions and stuff like that. And they want to feel like they feel like they're passive. You know, they feel like they've got no control over it, and they blame the algorithms as if the algorithms are even, like, you know, alive. They're not just like a mirror of your own desires and your own kind of interest. So what advice would you give to someone like that, who feels passive, who feels like they don't have control, and you're talking about, you know, being able to section, okay, I'm doing this for this time and I'm going to go back to that. What systems or what things have you learned that have helped you have that perspective, or help you when you're trying to, like, study for something, to be able to focus, like, for a period of time?
Choose your stimulus wisely. I think we always want to be stimulated and have something in the background, whether it be music or, you know, I just like, if I'm doing something, I'm doing something. You know, I don't need music to accompany me unless it's actually adding a benefit. So I think just checking in on yourself, and seeing, you know, what's the actual priority. I think that's important. You know, I hope a friend won't mind if I bring them in. But I was staying with a friend and a family friend, and it was like 12 at night, and I went to get water, and he had an AirPod in, and I was like, "What are you listening to?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just need the AirPod in." So he was listening to something, but he wasn't actively registering it. To me, that's taking up attention, like you said. And, you know, just organizing your attention so that it's allocated the most efficiently. Talking like an economist, but
allocate your attention efficiently, or it will be done for you.
Yeah.
This is the age we live in. Okay, no, I think that's. I think.
Do you agree? What do you think?
I'm very sporadic with this. I kind of like, I do think that it's super true. So I used to do the thing, and I've told you about it, where I'd like allocate every single activity that I did throughout the whole day, and like the time that I would do it for, and how long I would do it for, and I would stick religiously to it because I understood that there is no time in the world. You make time. Time is a construct, absolutely. And so like you can make the time how society gives it to you, 24 hours and whatever it is, in between you go to sleep, you wake up, or you can like divide it as much as you can to be as efficient as possible. And some people might look at it as like, oh my God, I would hate to live like that. But for me, I would hate to live the other way, where like I just have no control over the things that I do. That scares me.
Yeah.
Because that just means that I could like time, months will go by, years will go by. My biggest fear is like lost time. So like that's why I was like, cool, let me like structure it. And so there is an aspect to that. Like that's one way that I found to offset the constant distractions is to like, I don't have no time for constant distraction. It's not in my schedule. Maybe I have time for like to watch a movie at the end of the day, but it's like I've decided to watch that movie. I've like chosen a movie that I know I would like. And so I'm enjoying that experience. I don't feel guilty about scrolling TikTok, and obviously I'm not perfect. I do fall for these traps, I'm on Instagram because I have to promote myself on Instagram, but it also means I'm there and it's one click away from being on the reel. And I'm like, I hate doing this, but I think this is another question too. It's like the changing between consumer and producer. I think that's super important. If you're on these platforms and you feel like you have to be on there, don't just consume. Learn how to be a producer. Learn how to be something who gives something to these things rather than consume. Because if you consume for too long, then you become passive. I think that's the relationship you have with that idea. People become passive if you consume for too long. It's just on a broad societal perspective. I think we should have more of a producing kind of personality or like a way to view these things. Like actually, these are platforms that I can benefit from by just producing whatever. Maybe you don't have to produce if you don't want to, but like I understand that I'm not just here to just consume consistently, and that will help you a little bit, because like to me, the biggest distraction for me and like the biggest like time suck for me is always social media platforms when like, so I have this thing where if I'm doing deep work on like researching or something, I'll put a timer on. Sometime I can see myself like how long I've been going without being distracted. I put my phone in my bag or something, right? And I can, every single time I'll tell, when it gets an hour 20, I'll be like reaching to my bag. Knowing I have a timer there to try check the time. Then when I check the time, I'm like opening up my phone and then I'll get a message here. Let me check this message. And before I know it, 15 minutes has passed. I'm trying to reply to a message. I'm like looking at Instagram. I think the passiveness of that scares me. The ability where you're not even thinking about it. It's just a habitual thing we do. Habit. I think that's kind of like scary to me. Like I will try to offset that. We have to be more intentional with the way we deal with these things, the way we think about things, the way we kind of like consume these things, because otherwise we waste so much valuable time on these things because they're designed to take our time. What is the biggest enemy of your attention, do you think? What's something you've been trying to work on?
I'll probably reframe that. I don't think I have an enemy of my attention. I am my biggest ally in terms of my attention.
First.
Sort of checking in on myself and seeing, do I actually want to be spending time on this? Because I personally think I have control over how I choose to allocate my time. Not saying I enjoy being in control of my time all the time. Sometimes I enjoy, hanging out with my friends. If someone randomly shows up at my house and I hang out with them, that sort of thing. But I think having the flexibility to know, okay, my time, I'm going to choose to allocate it like this, but if it doesn't work out, I can choose to allocate it like this. So just checking in on yourself. I think the point that you were making about, checking your phone and going on to, social media, I think that comes from a place of discipline. So when you were saying, oh, I need to check the time, so I go on my phone and then I check my messages, I think for me that's discipline and respecting the work that you're doing. For me, when I'm doing my work, I kind of I'm locked in. If I'm actively engaging with my work, I don't really notice the time passing because I kind of really get into it. And then once I start getting a bit fatigued and, you know, I'm not working as productively as I could be, then I'll turn to something that regenerates me. Do you know what I mean? It's not just time pass, it's actively helping me get better. So that's how I allocate my time. Sound a bit like a robot?
No, it doesn't. I think, look, you have to do these things. Like I was literally saying, I schedule, because you have to, because it makes, like, how efficient do you want to be? Essentially is how you're asking yourself. Like, how much do I care about the thing I'm doing? How much do I want to make sure that I do it in the right way? I think that's super important. On your comment, actually, do you think then the focus is about being disciplined, or do you think it's about being very curious and engaged in what you're doing?
I think curiosity as a mindset is, you should always have it. You know,
Curiosity is a mindset.
Curiosity is a mindset. You should always be interested in something.
Go on.
I think, but how you're curious is maybe discipline. That's an assertion I haven't thought about. I've just kind of said it.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
I think you should always be open to trying something new, asking questions, learning about the people around you, you know, having a conversation with the people around you. I think, you know, you should always be open to it, but how you do it is discipline. You know, asking questions, that kind of thing. But curiosity and discipline are both very, very important to me. So, yeah. I agree. So I come from a sports background. So it's very much like discipline is important to me, because it's like, okay, be there on time, do this time, like do this multiple times, like repetition, all of that. To me, it's like very important. And like a lot of the time I see progress only from discipline. There's this idea that discipline is freedom. And I do agree. You know, it's like when you're actually disciplined about something is when you have freedom. You know, people think that's paradoxical, but if you just do whatever, you really, because I think there is like habits that people just take on throughout their life that they don't discipline themselves to stop. And so like, if you're not like very like, you know, attentive, you know, about your, the things that you do and disciplined about it, you're just all over the place. So I think it's important to, and for me, at least, I follow my curiosity. I've like an insatiable curiosity, you know, I just always want to know more and like why. Definitely. Like first principle, why? Like why. I was that annoying kid in school that would always ask why. And every teacher would be like, why are you still here? It's lunchtime. Go and play. Go be with your friends. But I was just curious. And I think that's kind of what led me to like learning about Shakespeare and all these writers and like, you know, all these concepts and like reading all these books, because I was in search of why, the question why. And I think that's very important for me. So when I get engaged in something, like when I research, for example, for this podcast, like professors, and I'm like listening to what they say and I'm like coming up with questions, I'm like engaged in it for like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours about like why, trying to figure out the questions that I want to ask them. And I think that's, for me, that's when I feel most engaged. I think that's when life becomes fun. You know, when you're like doing things that you're curious about. But at the same time, I think, you know, when you're talking about your teacher telling you to go play, I think play is also part of the discipline. You need to be able to play or else you're going to burn out.
Absolutely.
So I think that, you know, everything in moderation, or at least, you know, have that balance so it's it, you know, sustains you for the long time.
I have a hot take.
What's your hot take?
I don't believe in moderation.
Okay.
I believe in balance.
Okay.
But I don't believe in moderation. I believe in going extremely hard at everything you want to do, because moderation is fail.
Okay.
I know you're just trying to think.
No, I'm just
trying to think about it.
No, I'm just trying to process.
Do you have any questions about that? Okay, let's now spin it. You can question me about that hot take.
No, I'm just trying to understand what context we can talk about. Because
okay, that's about work. Like in terms of working. Like I think working is super important. And I would rather work on the things that I care about like 8 hours a day and not do anything else and not take a break. And like I get the idea of breaks like as a concept to breather, but I think you lose a lot of momentum when you take breaks.
False. Because a break is there so that you don't get fatigued. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're working at 100% capacity and then you go down to 0, that's not. You need that time to recharge.
But is fatigue based on consistency, or is it based on like yourself? Like for example, right? if I start running tomorrow, right, I get fatigued after, if I just started, I get fatigued after half an hour. If I've been running for a year, I'm not going to get fatigued. I can go the whole way. So I think fatigue is actually based on your ability to repeat a thing for a long time, enough times that you increase the distance between when you start and you get fatigued. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you're also not Forrest Gump.
How do you know? I might be.
I think that's sort of a strange example. I still disagree. I'm just trying to make sure I use the right words. Why?
You're fine. They can cut this part out if it's...
No. I think it's like I like the running analogy. But when you first start out, you're going to have to take a break. And if you push yourself to keep taking a break, to not take a break, sorry, you're going to do damage to yourself.
I think that's an idea human beings have.
No. That's categorically true. If it's your first time running,
okay.
right, after forever,
after
and you're running,
yes,
and you say, you know what, I'm not going to take a break, you're going to do damage to your body.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of how your body is responding to things, and if we move away from the analogy, how you are responding to things, how you're taking on new material, new stimuli, and how you're cooperating with it, so that your next time that you approach running, you're prepared for it, whether that be, doing stretches before and afterwards because you didn't do that last time, or learning from that experience, then moving on. So when we say moderation, it's about how you're allocating your time, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly. Yeah.
It's not talking about how you approach something. Of course, when you approach something, it should be with 100% commitment. Do you know what I mean? You should give it your all. But moderation is how much of this is going to take up my life, and how much do I want it to take up my life.
Yes. I don't think you should be moderating that either. I think it should.
But that's where discipline comes in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If there's something that you have in your life that's a non-negotiable, whether that be going for a walk in the morning, because that, sets you up for the day. By your example, that would be, I'm going to walk for the entire day because I care about walking. But that's not true, is it? You can approach your walking with 100% commitment. I'm not going to listen to music. I'm going to take in the world around me. That's not the moderation we're talking about. The moderation we're talking about, I say we, it's me. The moderation I'm talking about is how does it fit into your life, that kind of thing, and how you organise it. You're more than welcome to go on a walk for the whole day, but I won't be joining you.
I think, and I do agree with you as someone. I do agree with you when you talk about, especially that the moderation is about the discipline and the breaks that you take, rather than about like how much time you spend doing something. The reason, and maybe we work from reasoning backwards, the reason that I think that is because I see a lot of people when it's talk about moderation, when they say like, okay, like let's be moderate and stuff, it's a way for them not to commit fully to anything. Okay. What's the phrase? Master of none, jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
I put it wrong. Okay. But like that, it's like kind of like, okay, put in 50% in a lot of things, but not 100% in anything.
Yeah.
And what I mean by when I say moderation is fatal is that like, we are very, again, this might be my Achilles, watching Troy when I was like 12, kind of like, thinking, but we have a very short span of time here. And so if you don't focus intentionally on what you care about, and like, there's this aspect of like, it's inertia. The more you do something, the more it grows. So this idea of like moderation does more damage than good, because people feel like they have to stop at a certain point rather than just like push through, because it is mind over matter sometimes. And don't injure yourself. Don't go running the whole day when you first start. But you can't do a marathon like that. And they might tell you.
I'd like to see you sign up for the London Marathon.
I might do it now, just to prove you wrong.
But I think the reasoning you have behind it is fine, but maybe moderation is the wrong word. Yeah. I think moderation has the idea of intentionality behind it that you don't like. So maybe nonchalance is the word. Nonchalance, sort of this apathy towards, anything else. I think moderation is still intentional. Yeah. You can either choose to be extreme, nonchalant, or moderate.
Yeah.
Choosing moderation has that intentionality behind it.
I agree with that.
So I think you're talking about nonchalance.
I think, apathy is actually the better word to say.
Okay.
Apathy is the one where I dislike because apathy
Yeah.
creates zombie people.
But moderation's in your good books.
Moderation, you've convinced me, is okay.
Yes. Okay.
Moderation is, apathy is a favorite thing. My mom was going to thank you too. Like, yes, he's not going to go crazy and destroy himself for work. But I don't know. I think like people, I don't know, this idea like great people like go full and like they figure out how to balance other things. Like I said, balance is important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I go hard in the gym. Like when I do jiu-jitsu, I'm like, but then I like get myself out of that and like stand under a tree and write poem.
Mm-hmm.
Because like balance, those two dichotomies is important to me. It's important to have both.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to spend time with family and just being totally engaged with that. But also to be locked away 6 hours editing, writing, doing all that stuff. You know, because like, I guess, I don't know, like your life source has to be put towards something. And I think we like that. You talk about with some people before about like how people are like so brain rot. Our life source are not our own anymore. And I think that's kind of like these systems, thinking systems, you know, like, you know, all these things. And to wrap it up and to come back to what we were talking before at the beginning with Hamlet, I think Hamlet's plague of just thinking too much because of real issues that he had by, you know, kingdom level issues, it's been diluted. Well, we have the same kind of symptoms without the drastic, you know, family drama. You know, we have an issue where we're thinking too much, we're overthinking, we're like, oh my God, to be or not to be, you know, in the truer sense, you know, and it's like, I think we need to, we don't need to do anything, but I think we have to revisit that relationship we have with the mind, of how we think, how we kind of approach things like that. The question for you is, if Hamlet was here today, what advice would you give to Hamlet?
Make a decision, mate. No, I'm joking.
And is that the same advice you would give to people that have the same thinking patterns as Hamlet?
I think people are a lot more different to Hamlet because Hamlet has to decide whether or not to kill Claudius.
It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. What advice would I give to Hamlet? God, that's a good question.
First one, right?
Just breathe, I think.
Breathe.
Take a second and breathe. I think he's dealing with a lot of things. And I think maybe he jumped into analysing it instead of processing his emotions. So maybe I think he's like intermingling those things. So just breathe, take a second.
I think that's a very good point. I think I'll make the point then. I think that's what we should do as a society. I guess people who think like Hamlet. Like I said, there's people who overthink because they've got no other choice. This is how we exist in the world. For those people, breathe. It's okay, you know. Like that's kind of like the idea behind stuff like that, you know.
Just take a second. It's okay. There's no rush. Yeah. Final question.
I like to ask everyone this question, and I hate when I ask them this question.
Okay.
But
God, what's it going to be?
What do you think the meaning of life is?
Easy question.
Very easy question. You know, should have started with that. To kind of like come back to what we're talking about, you know, I think a lot of Shakespeare's works kind of point at these questions about the meaning, about like what it means to be the human condition, like we spoke about. Spoke about a lot of things about it, you know, like how thinking, how like focus is important. But speaking on the most broadest term, in the most existential question, for you, what is the meaning of life? What is the reason we're here? What is the point of it?
I think the meaning of life it depends on who you are and what you want it to be. For me personally, self-development is probably a big part of what life means to me. Being aware that I can't control everything that happens in my life, but I can control my actions and my response to things. So fine-tuning how I want to approach things, how I want to respond to things, so that I can be the best version of myself. That's probably my meaning of life. And to have fun. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, be the best version of myself constantly. Because I don't think I will peak. I think I'm just constantly self-improving. So as long as I can find that trajectory, I think I'll be happy. And you can ask me on my deathbed, have I done that?
Like, meaning of life. And I'm like, nearly also dead. But on that journey, what are some of the aspirations let's manifest that? What are some of the aspirations that you want to aim for? What are some of the things that you want to kind of achieve in your life?
Well, I have my own personal goals that are for me, but my kind of general goal would be to somehow give back to the community. That would be one of my goals that I can share. And then, give back to the community, help lift up people around me so that they can also be the best versions of themselves. Learn from people around me. I think everyone has such different experiences that it would be silly not to learn from people around you.
I completely agree.
So that's probably one of my goals, to refine how I think and learn as much as I can.
I completely agree. And
is that a good goal?
That's a fantastic goal. And I agree with it because you've allowed me to learn from you today. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah. I've learned from you that you're going to do the London Marathon. That's what I've heard. Now
I have to now, right? Now I have to. But yeah, no, I've learned a lot from you today, and just obviously speaking to you also. You have a unique way of thinking. You have a unique approach to life. You talked about helping people. I completely see that. I think you are capable of that and more. So I wish you the very best. And I think, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be interesting to see like what you, get up to, what you accomplish.
Thank you. No pressure.
No pressure. I run the marathon. You save the world. Very easy. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for doing this in the middle of central London with all these people walking around. My phone nearly got stolen like 3-4 times, but you were locked in this whole time. It's going to be funny to see those moments. You talking like,
just side-eyeing.
Just side-eyeing everywhere as this person walks past. Yeah, but thank you for doing this in these conditions. I appreciate
you having me.
Of course.
I appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you guys for watching, and until the next time.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel. No, I'm joking.